Hey y'all, Tara G here, and in this video we'll be talking about the current winter storm that is going to be making its way across the country today into tomorrow with a massive Arctic blast behind it, and we'll also go over the potential for more snow in the future as we go towards the early middle portion of December. Let's go right on into today's video. We're going to start out with something a little bit different. This is going to be the NAM model, 2-meter temperatures in Fahrenheit. And let's go ahead and pull this on out here as we go into later on today about 7 p.m. Eastern. You'll notice this massive blast of Arctic air that's going to be pushing into a very large portion of the U.S. This is going to be one of, if not the most potent blasts that we have seen so far this winter season. And yeah, it's going to continue into the southern side of the U.S. as we go into Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon. We're going to be getting 20-degree temperatures potentially all the way as far south as northern Mississippi and northern Alabama, as well as along the Appalachian Mountain Range out here in the eastern side of the U.S., with those 20 and 30s pushing into the eastern side of the Rockies as well. And if we pull this out even further, going into Friday morning, look at that, Friday morning, this is probably going to be when it is the worst and the most potent cold air across the U.S. Most of the U.S. is going to be below, if not at the freezing point. You can see all of the East Coast, all of the central U.S., most of the western side of the U.S., and even a good chunk of the southern tier of the country will be at or below the freezing point as we go through the Friday morning time frame. Then as we get towards Saturday, this cold air is going to push off the coastline there of the East Coast, and then Saturday night into Sunday morning, it's finally going to slowly begin to warm up, and then that's where we reset. This is the end of your model run right here going into Sunday morning. Beyond Sunday morning, like I said, that cold air will be pushing out of here going into Monday. We're going to get another system that's going to come into the U.S. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Could bring severe weather to the deep south and maybe even a snow potential for areas in the Midwest and the northeastern side of the U.S., pushing that out even further. We're getting a little bit far out, but as we go towards about 180 hours out, we'll also be watching this low pressure system generally somewhere out in this area for the potential of a snowstorm as we go towards December 12th and 13th. Here's your CPC outlook for the risk of heavy snowfall for December 11th through the 13th. You can see they've outlined much of the Great Lakes, if not all the Great Lakes area, portions of the Northeast, and as well as the north central side of the U.S. We also have a risk for heavy rainfall across much of the southeastern side of the U.S. going into that same time frame, and this could actually be accompanied by some snow if we get another blast of cold air to push in behind this low pressure system. Then the northern side of that low pressure system may have some snow. We'll go over some scenarios here in just a moment. But before we go into those scenarios, I ask that you guys go ahead and hit that like button, share this video with your family, friends, social media, hit that subscribe button with the notification bell set to all if you are new to the channel, so you know when I go live or upload a video. Let's go ahead and continue on with today's video. Let's go ahead and dive on into some scenarios. This is the 12Z GFS model run, which just finished rendering in. Let's pull this on forward. So you'll see that massive blast of cold air that will be pushing in today into tomorrow and much of the U.S. and the southeastern side of the U.S. Going into Saturday, that cold air is going to begin to exit the U.S. We'll see that high-pressure ridge build over the southeastern side of the United States. We'll dive a bit more in depth on that severe weather potential, but generally we'll be looking at some thunderstorms in this vicinity here. It does seem like it's downtrended, so I don't think it will be any notable severe weather threat, but we'll still look at it. Going towards the December 9th and 10th time frame, we'll probably begin to see some snowfall up here near the northern Great Lakes and towards southwestern Ontario. That will be a possibility, pushing that out forward to Tuesday next week. That's going to be when our system starts to brew out there in the deep south. We'll look into the severe weather potential with this system as well, but what we're really going to be focusing on is this blast of cold air. You see this 540 line right here? That's the freezing point. If that freezing point mixes in a little bit more to the south here, closer towards, say, West Virginia or Tennessee, this is the scenario that could play out. Watch what the GFS does here going into the morning of December 12th. It has probably blizzard conditions in some areas here in the northeastern side of the US. I don't think that's much of a possibility, but I do think a weak snowstorm will definitely be a possibility going in towards the middle and latter half of next week. And this GFS model run continues with that heavy snowfall through all of Thursday, and then it exits the US as we go on into Friday. Moving to the CMC 12Z model run now, this will go out just as far as the GFS. You'll see that big blast of cold air with the snowstorm potential that we are seeing ongoing right now in portions of the north and northeastern side of the U.S. Pulling that out further, you'll see the high pressure build in the southern tier of the U.S. You'll start to see our first system that could bring some marginal severe weather going into December 8th and 9th out there towards Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi. That snowstorm potential for the far north central side of the U.S. going into western Ontario. That will get out of here going into Wednesday. And then this is our next system that we're watching. Again, this is your CMC model run. Takes a different scenario here. That cold blast is actually pretty far to the south and east, but your low pressure system is pushed off over here towards the coastline of the Carolinas out here in eastern NC, eastern South Carolina, and that doesn't allow for a lot of moisture to be transported to the north and west of that low pressure center because it's not well defined. So therefore the CMC model run just has maybe a small snowstorm or just some generalized flurries going into Thursday morning next week. Not even remotely close to as potent as what the GFS had. Now going into your European model run from last night, because our 12Z model run hasn't rendered in. This is December 10th, which is that possible severe threat out there in the deep south. And it does take a snowstorm up here towards southwestern Ontario and doesn't even really bother even getting close to the mid-Atlantic. You can see there's that low pressure center trying to form generally in this area going into Wednesday, that cold air pushing behind it, but the European model run just simply doesn't have enough moisture and it just doesn't come together, so therefore we just simply don't get a snowstorm on your European model run. This is your last model run, the Icon model run, pushing this forward with time here. This is going into December 7th, December 8th, pushing that even further, and you can see our first system getting brewing down here in the southern tier of the U.S. No cold air mixes in. Look how far behind that 540 line is. So this completely gets rid of any snowfall potential out there in the Midwest. Pushing that out further, the Icon model run does exactly what the European model run does, and it keeps that low pressure center really off the coastline of the Carolinas. That cold air comes behind it, but it's just not good enough and it's not fast enough. So we'll keep monitoring for the potential of a snowstorm with this system, but at the moment there's so much uncertainty that it's just going to be the classic good old watch and wait game. As you can tell, we have a lot of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings out currently for a good chunk of the northeastern side of the U.S. We've got some blizzard warnings out there in the higher elevations of the Appalachians in eastern West Virginia. Lake effect snow warnings are out for most of northwestern Pennsylvania, going into northeastern Ohio, southwestern New York, with those winter weather advisories surrounding that. Winter storm warnings out for the higher elevations of central New York, as well as the higher elevations in far northern Maine. Also for lake effect potential out here in western Michigan, we have those winter storm warnings out, also including north central Wisconsin, and then that winter weather advisory up there in North Dakota into northwestern Minnesota. Going into your future radar here, we're using the NAM3K model run precipitation type. Pushing this into tomorrow, you'll see that big heavy band make its way across portions, actually all of western Michigan. That's going to bring a couple inches of snowfall out there in western Michigan, going into northwestern Pennsylvania. Just a whole lot of snowfall for a lot of people out there in the northeast, especially if you live in lake effect areas or in the higher elevation areas. Looking at possible snowfall totals here, this is going all the way to the evening hours of the 6th. You can see we'll probably pick up on potentially a foot or so of snowfall out here across that lake effect snow area. Also up here in northeastern Ohio, maybe into southwestern New York as well. Those higher elevations near and south of Watertown, New York could pick up on a foot or so of snowfall as well. Going into Maine, there's going to be those higher elevations that are definitely going to be able to pick up on a couple inches to potentially a foot of snowfall as well. Western Michigan, that big heavy band of lake effect snowfall, definitely going to bring about a half a foot to a foot of snowfall in the western element of Michigan. This is your most likely scenario through December 15th, and you can see most likely we're going to just stick with a whole lot of snowfall in the lake effect areas and higher elevations in the northeast, as well as going into much of Michigan and the north central side of the U.S. Some snow potential will definitely start kicking up going in towards, the December 12th and 13th time frame, but it's all going to depend on that low pressure system. We'll see about any snowfall potential out there for the southern side of your Midwest states. Looking at your supercell composite here on your GFS model run, we're going to have some very small severe weather potential going into Sunday night into Monday morning. That's December 8th and 9th. After that, you'll see that supercell composite retreat back into the Gulf of Mexico until that next system comes by on December 10th and 11th, where we could have a little bit more of a potent severe weather threat, but it still looks like it's going to stick towards the immediate coastlines of the southern side of the U.S., so I don't see any major or anything big in terms of your severe weather side of things. We're going to close here with your GFS 500 millibar wind speeds. You can see this massive positively tilted trough here going over portions of the north central U.S. today. That's to blame for your snowfall out there in the northeast, as well as that blast of cold air that is pushing through today into tomorrow. After that, you'll see this trough ejection in the southwestern side of the U.S. that's going to hang around for a couple of days. Not going to cause much until about December 9th or 10th, when we could have that very small, very marginal severe weather threat out here somewhere generally around Louisiana, and then that pushes on out pretty quickly, and then we'll get another trough going into December 11th and December 12th. That could cause, that's what we were talking about for the potentially more potent severe weather threat, but it still doesn't look like anything notable just yet going into Wednesday, December 11th. That will also be the system that could cause your snowstorm potential, or at least snowfall potential in the Midwest going into the northeastern side of the U.S. And then after that, we get into fantasy land. I don't really want to go much more over 200 hours out. So yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, make sure you hit that like button on the way out, subscribe if you are new, and share this video with your family, friends, and on social media. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys in the next video or live stream that I do. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.